Hey everybody, and welcome back to part 2 of this video series that we're doing. And surprise, it's another breakfast. Why? Because, well, I just didn't cook dinner last night. I just wasn't feeling it, wasn't really hungry, so I went to bed. And while that can be a good thing to do to save money, also keep in mind two things. Number one, I'm very fat, so for me, missing a meal isn't a big deal. Alright? And number two, I know I have food available to me if I needed it. If you're somebody who's actually struggling with food, I would not recommend skipping meals. You know, it's just got to get the calories when and where you can. So, judge for yourself on that one. But we're going to go ahead and cook breakfast. For breakfast today, it's going to be almost a carbon copy of yesterday. All right, we're doing the chorizo, the bologna, the eggs, I'm going to use the tortillas I cooked yesterday. Two main differences. Number one, I'm finally using cheese because I love cheese and I've missed it. And number two, when I was off camera, I went ahead and cooked up some beans. So I took a pound of pinto beans, just cut up a little bit of onion, threw that into my crock pot, added some water, turned the crock pot on high, let it go for a few hours. I didn't film it because who wants to sit there and watch a crock pot full of beans cook for 4 hours? I didn't think that you guys would enjoy that, so I just did that little step off camera. But we're going to show you guys how you just take humble beans, and I have 4 bags worth of beans. And this is honestly a bit too much for one meal, so just like yesterday with the tortillas, we're going to make a whole batch, eat what we want, and then we're going to go ahead and just store the rest for a later meal. Because there's never really a time I don't want refried beans. That's what I'm doing with this first batch. So let's go ahead and get to cooking. I love you guys and thank you for coming along this journey with me. So I was able to get my tripod somewhat fixed. This is still kind of a weird angle. I apologize for that. Things will get better as we go on. So for right now, we're going to kind of do things a little bit differently than how we did yesterday. Yesterday, I did the tortillas first. That's what took the longest. Today's going to be a relatively shorter video compared to what yesterday was. And that's just because, number one, we already have the longest part done, which was the tortillas. And number two, because it's just not a complicated meal. Like I said yesterday, I showed the tortilla making for 2 reasons, like I said, to display some skill, but also just as an example of what you can do if you have to. So we're going to go ahead and just chop this up a little bit more orderly than yesterday. It's actually a big relief that I was able to get my tripod somewhat working, because holding the camera while trying to do this stuff, not very fun, believe it or not. Makes for some very awkward cooking. And this does not have to be perfect, as you see. I'm simply just chopping it up in the size that I like. And now we're just going to let that sit. Don't worry that the 2 pieces are sticking together a little bit. As it starts to cook, it'll release the moisture and they'll separate just fine. Alright. So, between yesterday and today, we've used 4 slices of bologna, and we've still got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 left. So just out of the bologna, which again costs maybe $1.50, we're having 4 meals out of this. All right, 4 meals out of a single package of Bar S bologna, and this is the 12-ounce package. So I think, to me, that is pretty good for the money. You're welcome to agree, you're welcome to disagree. This is the foods that I chose for my budget meal. If you want to choose something else, by all means, please do. If you have access to a local grocery store where you can get, some kind of bacon or sausage or chunk meat relatively cheap, please do so. Get it. I want you to eat your way that's going to make you the happiest. And see right there how it's nice and separating? That's what we want. Okay. And now that's just going to sit for a minute. Don't want to drop that. That's kind of the important part of this. So the beans. Beans are probably the best overall survival food that you can have. They're filled with protein, they're filled with other vitamins. You know, they're good for you. And they're cheap. Like I said, a whole bag, which I only cook half the bag, so a 2-pound bag cost me $1.35. I cooked half of it, and I got 4 servings, minimum 4 servings, out of this first cook, and I'll get just about the same, if not exactly the same, out of the next. And like I said, I'm most likely not eating all of those. I'm not the most hungry in the world right now. But, so it's a good, cheap food, and it's just plenty of calories. It's enough to keep you working all day. And I don't drain my beans. See, there's a few different methods in which to cook beans. Some people, what they like to do is they like to soak them overnight. And that's fine. You can do that. Other people like to just take and you put them in a pot, then you bring them up, you take the dry beans, put them in the pot, pour the water on, bring them up to a quick boil, and then you turn off the heat and let them soak for 20 minutes. And then that's the quick soak method. They're not ready to eat at that point, but they're ready for you to boil. So I don't do that personally, just because that's not the method I was taught, believe it or not. I was taught to cook my beans from dry. So I just take them and add them into whatever I'm doing, whether that's a crock pot or whether or not it's an actual pot. So I just take that, add my beans in, my dry beans, add my water, and then I just cook them. I haven't found any one particular method saves time, so I just go with that usually because, well, I'm a truck driver, so I'm always working. So I'll go ahead and I will start a pot of beans when I start my day, and then by about halfway through my day, well, there you go, my food's done, and I can go ahead and cook and eat my food and eat my dinner or lunch or what have you. So it works out really well. In my industry, you have to find ways in order to do these things that you want to do because, well, nobody wants to give you the time to do what you want to do. That's another reason why tonight's going to be a very quick meal, is the simple fact that I do not have the time to make a long video. I've got to go work. I've got to drive about 600 miles today in order to make the next couple of days work out. So you got to cook to your schedule and cook within your means. So I'm going to go ahead and finish up frying this bologna. We'll get that out of the pan and we'll move on to the next step. Bologna's all nice and fried up. Now we're going to go ahead and add some butter to our pan. And we're going to go ahead and cook the beans first, and then we'll do the eggs and chorizo last. And then we'll show another step that I didn't actually show yesterday. See, cooking in a semi, you have to do things just a little bit differently. And one thing that you always have to keep in mind is that I only have this one burner, so I'm cooking everything individually. And that often results in some of the meal being cold. So what I like to do, and like I said, I didn't show this yesterday, I just didn't think it was necessary, but I want to be honest and show you guys everything on this. After I go ahead and cook my last part of the meal, I'll generally put everything back into the pan to get it nice and heated back up, so that way I can enjoy my food hot. Alrighty, so we got that in there. Ooh, those are some fine smelling beans. And we're just going to go ahead and add the beans in here. And just, we're letting these go. Again, I'm sure you know this, obviously I put in butter. Traditionally, done with lard. Same way I was telling you with the tortillas yesterday, generally done with lard.
It can be done with butter, but it's just not the most traditional way. Then again, it's not the most traditional to use a spatula as a press either, but I just broke my refried bean presser thing. I don't even know what it's called, the masher, I guess. But yeah, I broke that on accident. So, you know, what can you do? You got to work with the tools you got. So, you know, start mashing these up. And they're getting a little bit warm right now, but as we create more surface area, they'll just continue to warm up. And if you noticed, I haven't put any salt or anything in. I did not add salt when I cooked these, because you really don't want to add salt when you cook beans. I've heard people say that it's fine. In my experience, they don't soften up as well. So, you know, judge for yourself. Try it both ways if you want. I just personally don't add salt when I'm cooking the beans. Initially, you could add salt here, but I've decided that I want to use salt on this meal as a seasoning, as a table seasoning, not as a cooking seasoning. So, yeah, we're going to go with that. Alright, so we're getting this. It doesn't take much. You know, I mean, that turned into a nice little pan worth of refried beans, and now we're just letting it get nice and warmed up. The butter is nice and absorbed. And just so you know, I say butter, what I really mean to say is margarine. You know, I'm cooking with Imperial. Usually I like using real butter, but I grew up eating Imperial and there's nothing wrong with it. It tastes just fine. Yeah, I prefer the taste of real butter, but again, on a budget, you have to get what you can. And Imperial is significantly cheaper than any kind of real butter that I could find. So, you know, don't be too set in your ways and don't be too proud to eat what you have to eat. You know, like that's what hurts a lot of people, is they feel like they're too good for a certain food. Well, you know, when you feel like you're too good for a certain food, guess what? You end up with a starving belly. So we're just going to go ahead and start taking the cheese, breaking it up, adding this in here. No real measurements, just cut as much as you think you need. Now we're just going to fold this a little bit, try to get that cheese nice and melted. And if it doesn't melt all the way, that's fine, because like I said, we're going to go ahead and bring this back into the pan to heat it back up once we finish the other things. There we go. Alright, that cheese is starting to melt. Okay. Now I'm sure, as you can tell, I'm not the world's cleanest cook. I mean, nothing that I'm doing is, you know, nasty. At least I don't believe so. You know, it might not be top restaurant standards, but it's good enough for a Denny's. Okay. So there we go. That's how I like to do my breakfast beans. I'm going to let these go ahead and sit for a couple more minutes, and then once they're done, I'll pull them out and we'll get on with the final steps before we eat. Alright, rock and roll. We got the beans all done. So now we're going to go ahead and make the second to final part of this. Take a little bit of the chorizo, put that in the pan. And like I was telling you yesterday, it's really important that you let this sweat before you try adding your eggs. Otherwise, your eggs they're not going to turn out right. Our pan's a little bit hotter than I really like it to be when it comes to chorizo, but that's okay. I can work with that. Got to get this nice. Swirl it around, break it up. Get this nice and going. right now, remember, like I said, what we're trying to do is we're trying to render that fat out. Otherwise, it just doesn't taste good. You're getting chunks of this chorizo then instead of... This is mostly for flavor more than it is for actual sustenance or substance. So, you just want to break it up. The main reason I'm re-showing this part right now, even though it's the most basic and most simple, is because, well, yesterday you couldn't see me do this because of the weird camera angle. Again, I apologize about that. I had to do some repair work on my tripod. So we got that going right now, and we're just going to go ahead and continue on with this. Alright, now that it's broken up, so as you see, the grease is rendering out. It's not a whole lot right now, but it's there. You don't really need a whole lot for this. And that's something I don't really often see people doing cooking shows just do that. Like, you know, if you just lightly tap your spatula, it saves you from having anything stick to it. And now you guys get to see the fancy stuff. This is what was denied to you yesterday. Oh yeah. Take the 2 eggs. And yeah, I'm out of paper towels, so I had to use toilet paper too. Clean my hands. So get the yolks broken up. And just get this, start mixing up. Oh yeah, it's looking good right there. Okay, and because this pan was hotter than it was yesterday when I was cooking this, I'm sure you're noticing I'm not letting it sit like I did yesterday. And that's fine. I mean, it's just going to cook the same. It just cooks a little bit faster. And it doesn't hurt it either way. It doesn't matter if you cook this higher or lower. As long as you render your fat out of your chorizo, it does not matter at what temperature you have this. I like generally doing it lower, but because of the fact that I just got done doing the beans, then it was hot. Like I said, I don't have a ton of time this morning to eat. And by the way, if you're wondering why I keep saying this morning, even though this video is going to come out in the evening, is because I'm a truck driver. It's currently just about 10 o'clock in the evening here, and I'm cooking breakfast. Gotta love it. Gotta love the world of the truck driver. So if at any time you feel that these videos are being released at sort of weird times or schedules, that's why. I go off of my truck driving schedule. Alrighty. And I'm just going to chop these up real nice and fine. You know, again, I'm trying to spread it out between multiple tortillas. So the smaller it is, the better it is. You know, and that goes for if you're cooking for somebody else too, besides just you. Believe it or not, crack in one more egg. A little, you know, maybe a half amount, 50% more chorizo than you saw me put in. And crack in one more egg. And that would be enough to feed 2 people. Just cut it up nice and small like this. Tap, 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 tap. Alrighty. So, now that this is done, I'm going to go ahead and remove that from the pan. I'm going to put my tortillas in, get them nice and hot. And then we're actually just going to eat. See how I can feel the bologna's cold now? So we're going to go ahead and add that all back to get it up to temperature. Actually, you know what? I'm going to do it this way instead. The beans just came out. There was, maybe 30 seconds of separation between the time that you saw me cooking the beans to when I started the egg. So the beans are still nice and hot, and they'll retain their temperature for a little bit. So we're just going to go ahead and add the bologna back in there. I wish it was sausage. And let that get up to temperature with the eggs. Okay? And you're not hurting your eggs by doing this. They're already cooked. If you let it go too long, yes, you will take all the moisture out of them. So just be prepared for that. I can see there's still plenty of moisture in these eggs, so I'm not concerned about it. Okay. So this is going to take just a minute to get up to temperature. And then we're going to go ahead and we'll pull that off, and I will come back to you guys in a moment when I'm ready to eat. Breakfast time already. So, we got my tortillas here, got my beans, and from trying the beans, I can tell you they need some salt. So we're going to go ahead and grab a little bit of our salt here, just sprinkle these in. Like I said, I really wanted to use the salt as more of a table spice than a cooking spice. Mostly just because I can. I'm actually going to put that back in the pan. Keep it warm. Like I was telling you, as a truck driver, we don't have a ton of extra space. So, I'm just using my pan to keep my tortillas warm. Alrighty. So, there we go. Got the salt mixed in. Take the tortilla. Got the beans. Smear those out, make them nice and somewhat even on the tortilla as you can. That way you get a delicious beanie bite in every single bite. And that was completely redundant. Okay. There we go. Got the nice hot eggs and the chorizo. And got that bologna all mixed in. This is going to be a healthy little breakfast right here. Hot sauce from yesterday. And, this has no spice to it, like, at all. It's extremely, extremely mild. But it's got a wonderful taste. So, you know what? I'm going to rock with it. Pour a little bit of that on there. Alright, let's go ahead and give this a taste. I mean, look at that. That is a hefty little breakfast burrito right there. Just as good as yesterday, a little bit better because of the beans, if I'm being totally honest. Beans are a great additive. They put a ton of flavor into your food, but they also add a lot of substance, and they make it so it's heavier. It fills you up better. So if you don't have a lot of money, I highly recommend always making sure that you have some form of beans. I'm a big fan of pinto beans myself. That's what I mostly grew up eating. But, black beans, kidney beans, whatever have you, it's all cheap comparatively, and it's just good food energy. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and finish eating my breakfast. Then I'm going to go ahead and edit this video and throw it up. So thank you guys for rocking with me for day 2. I love you, and we'll see you in the next one.